Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, for honoring the ancestors. This is the fifth event in a mini series that I've been hosting on the topic of bringing your medicine into the world. And I'm excited for today's topic. My friend and colleague Iris Meyer is here with us. And this fifth event sort of marks a bit of a transition in the series. The first four parts, if you didn't see them, they are available on the website medicineweaver.org for playback. But they really started with our first topic was awakening your medicine gifts, and then trusting your intuition, transforming your trauma. And last month, we did a piece on befriending your wounded healer. And all four of those are really very much focused on the self in a way, you know, the journey of bringing medicine of your higher self into the world. And in this fifth event today, we're shifting into sort of expanding out into a bigger picture with the ancestors and looking at how the ancestors can play a part, or do play a part in our lives every day, and how the past and the present relationship to those ancestors impacts the medicine that each one of us carries and brings into the world. For me personally, I noticed a major shift in my own clarity, and sense of purpose, and even just in the way I related to this question of like, what is my medicine? How am I here to serve? Those sorts of questions. So I'm really excited because Iris, this is like a major focus in her life work. And she's a shamanic practitioner, and she does a lot of shamanic work, but one of the big focuses is ancestral connection, ancestral transformation, ancestral healing. So super excited to have you here, Iris, to help unpack this topic.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I'm really happy to be here. It's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I thought if you'd like to, maybe you could start just with sharing a little bit about how did you get into this ancestral work, or um, how did this come into your life to be such an important part of what your own healing and also the way that you help others?
Mhm. Well, so I've been doing shamanic work for about 12 years, although I have had shamanic connections my whole life. When I first started doing shamanic work, one of my first shamanic journeys, basically the ancestors came to me, and it was very intense and I didn't really know what was going on. But it was a calling to work in this medicine. So from very early on, I have been working with the ancestors. I've forged a relationship with my well ancestors who help me in all sorts of ways. And it, more and more, it's become very clear that it's super important for me as a practitioner, as a person, but also that it's a very important tool. It's a very important way of supporting everyone spiritually. Your ancestors are your most important spirit guides. They're the ones who want to help you because they're family. So they're powerful. You can access so much and transform so much with the help of your well ancestors. And that is what I've been doing since I started my shamanic path. My life has completely changed. Um, and that is partially down to my work with the ancestors. So I'm happy to share that now
Yeah.
with everyone.
And I one of the things you referenced already was this idea of the well ancestors.
Mhm.
Can you say a little bit more about that, what you mean by that?
Well, when we talk about the ancestors, conventionally we're talking about our blood ancestors. So the people who are related to us, our grandparents, great grandparents, great great grandparents, and so on. And when we look at people, anyone, in fact, after they die, shamanically, life, of course, continues. Life is a cycle. We're not just dying, our energy continues on. An unwell ancestor is someone who dies in energetic debt. So they die and their life is unresolved. So what happens with that. And it's very interesting to note a well ancestor is someone who's the opposite. They resolve their life. They learn the lessons of their life. They transform the energy or the debt that they were carrying. And they are able to become a well ancestor, a shining one, a luminous one. There are lots of different names for them in lots of different cultures. Many cultures venerate the ancestors, have different forms of ancestor worship. Not all of them differentiate between well and unwell ancestors, but I would say most shamanic cultures do. Interestingly, it's not about the life that a person lived. So you know your great aunt Mabel, who volunteered at the homeless shelter and went to church every Sunday, might not be a well ancestor, but your great grandfather who committed a crime could be. It really is all about resolving the energy of their life after their death. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so as you're saying that, I'm thinking that part of it has to do with how they die or how they navigate death, that as a portal, like how they transition to the other side.
That also, yes, for sure. That does happen because in our culture, we have no real clear navigation after death. People can get extremely confused, they can get stuck. And that can also affect whether you have a well or unwell answer. If it well or unwellness can be that someone is actually stuck. And there is a shamanic term for this called psychopumping. That's to help people who are stuck in the in between life and death transition to the other side. A lot of ancestral healing, some of ancestral healing is psychopumping, helping them cross over. But ancestral healing is more than that, because even when people cross over, the energy, the heavy unresolved energy can kind of live on in the next generations. And that's when we talk about ancestral patterns and carrying those patterns forward. It's the heavy unresolved energy from the unwell ancestors, from traumatic events that gets carried through the generations and is felt by people, by us, basically.
So is that primarily what, like when someone's unwell, say they pass through their death is clean, they go over, they pass to the other side, but
Mhm.
yet they're still in this state of unwellness. Is that primarily unresolved trauma from the life they lived, or what is like what? How
It,
does how is that determined whether someone is well or unwell?
well, so for me, someone is well if they have crossed over and gone through a period of reconciliation. Like, so they have actually, some cultures call it elevation. They've actually elevated to a well ancestor. So they've basically gone through their life, they've gone through a process, and they become a well ancestor. Some cultures actually believe that there are multiple parts of the soul and that you have an ancestral soul that goes through the process of becoming a well ancestor and then sticks around to help the descendants.
Hmm.
And then you have a personal soul that continues on your life's journey. That's one school of thought. So we make a big distinction in connecting to our well ancestors, to the ones who are well in spirit. If you don't make a distinction and you just connect to any ancestors, they're just dead people, really. They're not, even if they've crossed over and they're not stuck, they're not necessarily ghosts because they're not in the land of the living or the in-between state. They can still just be dead people. You have to consciously seek the ancestors who are well in spirit, and you do this by looking through the lineages for one who is well in spirit, and sometimes it's really far back. Some ancestors, some lineages, and this is something else. We have four main lineages of blood, which is our mother's mother, our mother's father, our father's mother, and our father's father. And when we look at these lineages, we can tell through different methods whether they are well or unwell overall. Like some lineages are very problematic and some are less so. And in the problematic lineages, you may have to go back hundreds of years to find a well ancestor, someone who really can help you who can really hold the energy, who can really help you transform and support you in becoming your highest self,
Mm.
which is, of course, what well ancestors do. They help us. They want what's best for us.
I'm thinking of it kind of like the idea of a bodhisattva, like someone who's here in service.
Is exactly
It's
that.
it's like an ancestor who has stayed around on the other side, or someone who's passed in your lineage who's still around to
Yeah,
be of service to the lineage.
that's correct. Yeah, and so we make a concerted effort to contact those individuals. And of course, the idea of whether they stayed around or they stuck around, I think it's far more fluid than we understand, and time doesn't work like we think it does in the
Yeah.
in the other side. It's who knows how it quite works, but the ancestors are the well ancestors are always there for us, um, as a resource, and it's a tremendous one because we are their descendants. We are the fruit of their branch, like we are part of them. So they really want what's best for us.
Mhm.
And it's very powerful to connect to them. But often it takes time. If you have problematic lineages, there has to be some healing work done before you can access the full sort of power and magic of that lineage. And I have a lot of as is often, the whole wounded healer thing. My lineages have been incredibly heavy, particularly on my mother's side. So it has required a lot of transformation work, a lot of holding and letting go of the pattern that were personally affecting me. The reason that I have this, I'm actually at my parents' house at the moment. And instead of their rather messy guest room, I've put up a picture of the cottage where my fourth great grandmother was born. It's like 3 or 4 generations of the family were born here in Wales. And I had the opportunity to visit it 4 years ago. But this is a lineage that I have spent a lot of time transforming because it had a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that was directly impacting me.
Mm. So it's like on one hand, there's the well ancestors, there's a huge well of power and resource and support that can come
Mhm.
from having this relationship with the well ancestors. And then in what you're speaking to about transforming it, kind of reading between the lines that the ancestors could also have maybe is it the unwell ancestors that were
Yeah.
having an impact that sort of called you into this work? Or
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
just curious how, like, where that just like, how would someone maybe like, how was that showing up in your life, for example,
Well,
that
for
you
me, yeah. Sorry.
go ahead.
For me, there's always been a lot of heaviness in the family, a lot of drama, a lot of sort of tragedy. Everything was a drama. Everything, things just went wrong and went wrong and went wrong with my family, in my parents, with my parents, and also personally, I had a lot of. I felt very lonely, very alone. Really had a lot of felt unlovable from a very young age for no reason at all, because my parents, even though there were traumas in their family story, in our family story, my parents were really loving. I had good friends, but I always felt very unloved and unlovable and alone. And I did, when the first ancestral healing work that I did, I traced it back to an ancestor, the fourth great grandmother, no, the third great grandmother. Oh, sorry. The fifth great grandmother who was in this house, and nearly all of her children left and moved to America, and she was basically left alone and didn't really hear from them because this was 1820 and that mail was infrequent, and so she had this quite significant loneliness, unlovableness, all of that. And I carried that personally for many years until I identified it, connected with her, and transformed that energy and was able to remove that pattern that was carrying. And of course, when it's a pattern that you carry from your ancestors, your own parents and grandparents generally carry that pattern. So my mother also had that feeling. And that's just one example. There are many more slightly dramatic examples from this lineage,
Mm.
which I can share.
That makes me wonder, as you're sharing that, is like when you did that work for that part of your lineage with your fifth great grandmother, did that work, did you feel a benefit in yourself? I'm imagining. And
Mhm.
does that also impact the other living members of your lineage?
It does, and that's what's amazing about ancestral healing. It impacts all of the members of your lineage, living or dead, and the future members. So I have a son, his children, and him, and definitely my mother. I did see my mother felt it, and she did see a change um, in her behavior, in her need for validation, which is how it expressed in her. I just felt extremely like low self-esteem, and that was how it expressed to me. The thing is, ancestral patterns, you're born with them, so they're like a part of you, and it can be hard to get a fix on what it is, on if it's your personal stuff, if it's maybe past life stuff, and that's another kind of ancestors that we'll talk about in a minute, or if it's your ancestral patterns, because like I like to say, you're walking around with ancestor tinted glasses. You don't really know that this way of the world is not the true way of the world, because you've always seen it that way. And
Mm.
so for me, and also this catastrophizing, always having a drama, always having something, like it was always the end of the world, that something would happen and everything would collapse, and that I believe came from, again, the same, my mother's lineage, where there was an extreme trauma that did cause everything to collapse, and then that living on the edge, living always being afraid that everything would fall apart. um, and in fact, my parents' life did fall apart. They went bankrupt and lost the house that they built, and there was this huge drama, and it was exactly the same kind of drama that affected my great great grandfather and great great grandmother. So and these kind of patterns can repeat themselves with that. Yeah.
So when you journey, like the journey you described, uh, the first journey with your fifth great grandmother, or tending to this pattern of catastrophizing, when you journey and do the transformational work around that, are things just, is it, they're just different after that? Is it kind of like trickle down, or is it more complex?
Well, so that's a really good question, because the energy is transformed, and this pattern that has been inherited, that has been passed down the generations, is removed. And there are many different ways to do this. This can actually be done also in a shamanic healing, like where I would find the pattern and remove it for someone. Although it's often more empowering to do it oneself, through ritual, through your own sort of work. But once that pattern is removed, your brain is still habituated to that kind of thing. So you have to be quite vigilant, um, to realize, like, oh, well, my car broke down. This is not the end of the world. Instead of just flying into, oh my God, the car's broken down. Everything's horrible. If you go into that pattern of catastrophizing, or, oh, my friend canceled, that doesn't mean they don't like me anymore. It just means that they can't come. You have to be quite clear and vigilant to check that your brain isn't falling into these dysfunctional patterns, even if the underlying pattern is gone.
Hmm. Yeah, that
But
makes
that
sense. Go
it's,
ahead.
I mean, there are practices like affirmations, building an altar. There are practices that can be put in place to help that. It requires, like, all healing is a path, and all healing requires effort on the part of the person who's being healed.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like an integration process too. It's like maybe
definitely.
the transformational, like the energy work, the um, work on the spirit plane to change the pattern is one step, but then actually creating the change in the like physical body and the brain in this form, in this life, takes some practice and discipline.
It does, yeah.
Mhm.
But even if you do nothing, even if you do nothing, the pattern is lighter. So it will not affect you. It might still affect you, but for example, if you have children or grandchildren, there's still energetic benefit, even if you don't do the work, but you don't feel it as well if you don't do the work.
I imagine just becoming conscious of it is really supportive too, where it's like maybe there's this pattern that you can't quite understand where it came from. Like you said, it's been there forever, but you can't quite see it, like see the
Yeah,
roots. And part of it is because the roots aren't in this life, aren't from this lifetime, and aren't
that's
even
true.
from something that the person like has lived. Like you had never lived that experience, so you had no story. And then to just bring the pattern into the light, to be able to see it, to have a story around it, I would imagine that in itself also helps to start to, for the person to make a change of like, oh,
It
that's that old story showing that's not me, that's not mine, that's not
It's
um
true. And the good news is it's not your story. So it actually lives quite easily comparatively. It's not like if you've experienced your own healing trauma takes time, as you know, right? Healing trauma is a multiple step process. Healing ancestral trauma is actually a lot easier because it's not your story. And we write our stories. We get to choose what story we are bringing into the world or we're living. And we can say, no, that's not my trauma. I mean, I have, again, in this lineage, there's a lot of sexual abuse. And for me, it actually, I would almost act as if I was an abuse survivor sexually. And I have never had any experience like that at all. And when I realized what was going on, I was able to say, no, this isn't my trauma. I'm not taking this on anymore. And it shifted. But I didn't understand. I thought, was I abused somewhere? What was going on? Was there something that happened as a child? And it was just because it wasn't mine. But I was the mother, the grandmother, the great grandmother, like I was inhabiting that trauma physically. But
mhm.
I said no, and that lifted that trauma. It's very interesting.
Great. And I had in my mind, you said we'd get into, you were talking about there's the blood ancestors and then there's the soul ancestors, I think you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have, generally when people talk about ancestral healing, we're talking about the blood ancestors, but we also have soul ancestors, what is called the white line. The blood ancestors are the red line, and the red line and the white line kind of are like two strands of DNA, as I was taught this from some of my shamanic training. But it is so true that you also have a lineage of your soul. This is the lineage of your incarnation. It's your incarnation line. And you have both patterns that follow you through lifetimes, which are kind of like story arcs, things that you need to resolve. And you also have ancestors from those lifetimes. And if you really get into it, sometimes those ancestors from those lifetimes are other incarnations of you. And I don't, that seems very complicated, but it just is how that is. So when we work with ancestors, we need to work both with the soul ancestors and with the blood ancestors. And together, those provide you with an extreme amount of support. And, working with well ancestors of both lineages is really amazing. And you can do the same transformation work for your soul ancestors as you can for your blood ancestors.
Hmm.
I suppose it's a little bit more esoteric because you're doing past life stuff. Well, I mean, this is all like that, but it works the same way because the energy of the soul travels down a line, just like the energy of the blood does. And it accumulates heavy energy, it accumulates patterns, it can accumulate curses, which is not a word that I use lightly. Curses are sort of like deliberate negative energy that's created by someone and sent. It can be conscious or unconscious, doesn't have to be like a witch making a curse, but it's a deliberate creation of negativity that's sent down the minds. And those curses can follow you through past lives or through ancestral. lineages. And that's a slightly different, that's a little bit, it's a pattern, but it's more so, it's a bit heavier. But it
Hmm.
can be easily lifted with the right practitioner.
And is it the same sort of indicators like the soul ancestors, or having a curse, for example? Um, like how would that manifest in this life?
So a curse is something that's much more dramatic. Like I think the famous one is the royal family. This is just an example. The royal family of Monaco was cursed in like the 15th century that they would never be happy in marriage, and they have never, none of the princes of Monaco have ever had a successful marriage since then. It's that kind of thing. Or maybe like everyone, all of the women never have a partner, or all of the men die before they're 50. It's often that. But you can also have a curse where you, even a self curse, where you keep yourself from fulfilling your highest potential.
Mm.
It's a bit more of a tricky energy, and it's a little bit more serious on some level than a pattern. It's not my main focus, but when it comes up, it's something that I can deal with. And if it comes up in a group setting, I can also identify it and kind of help the person lift it, because it's a very heavy energy, and it can be quite a lot to deal with.
Kind of like, I'm thinking of it as like an uncanny or um, an unexplainable amount of bad luck in a certain area,
And that
where
is definitely, yeah.
it's just like you can't uh, sort of average your way out. It's like beyond reason that it would happen that much
Yeah.
to
I, I
one person kind
yes,
of
and I've
deal.
had several family curses, several curses in my family. Some different, and all of a few of my lineages, like three of them actually. It is unfortunately common, but they vary in severity. You know, it can be just bad luck, or it can be, people dying. I did work with a client once, and like almost everyone in her family died because of a curse, and that's a different level entirely. That's not something that would generally happen with most people. But the focus is on, when we're looking at transforming the patterns, the focus is on just finding the pattern that needs transformation, and that could be a curse and it could be a pattern, and it really doesn't matter,
Hmm.
because the process is the same.
Hmm. And one of the things that's been lingering in my mind as we're talking, it's like a lot of this sounds kind of like a little bit of a leap of faith, in the sense of uh, just that it's very abstracted. And yet, I know there's scientific research being done on epigenetics. I don't know if you're aware of that, but
Yeah,
showing
for
that
sure.
even with like mice being for 7 generations forward, like when one mouse was exposed to a certain trauma, the next 7 generations forward all had the exact same response to a stimuli that was
Yeah,
associated with that trauma, even
yeah.
though they had no trauma themselves. So there really is something that science is beginning to understand about this as well.
It's true. And in my own life, my father fought in Vietnam, and I have memories, and sort of, I actually have memories of being in Vietnam, and I was of course not in Vietnam because I wasn't born yet. My sister also carries that, and so this really severe trauma, wounding, because it was in the heart of combat and jumping out of helicopters and everything, that actually really did affect us. Like we can feel that. And she and I both, and I only just found this out a few days ago, we cannot watch any Vietnam movies or anything like that. We just can't, because it's too traumatic. And I think that's why. But for sure, I mean, epigenetics is, it's interesting because Native Americans, they always talk about, at least in my training, we talked about 7 generations to come. You're working not just for yourself, but you're working for the next 7 generations, which is the amount of time that these patterns at least stay. But sometimes it can go for much further back. I worked in my own family lineage with patterns, from the 13th century, and they're still affecting. us today. So yeah.
Yeah, and so within this, it's I mean, and we've been talking a bit about how the wounded and the unwell and their old patterns can impact kind of in a detrimental way someone in
Mhm.
this life. And then we started with how a well ancestor can be a huge resource, and power.
Yeah.
And now, as we're starting to talk about 7 generations forward, I'm thinking too that the transformational work, the healing, can actually be a form of service to future generations.
It's true. And even if you don't have children, you're healing for the collective in a way. Because when you heal yourself, you're healing the earth, you're healing the world. Even if you are the end of the family line, you're healing your soul. And the energy goes back into the collective and it heals everyone. And of course, if you do have children, then you're healing all of the lines to come, which is a very important service to do. So, and when it also works backwards. So when we do this kind of healing, it goes back through the family tree.
Mhm. So I'm curious then, in the context of this series around bringing your medicine into the world, I feel like we're starting to talk about this a little bit, but how do you
Mhm.
see the ancestors being connected to this task of someone bringing their medicine into the world, being of service, that sort of thing?
Well, we're all born with a purpose. We're all born. In fact, we're all born really knowing who we are and how to, and how we're all born connected. But as we grow up and society gives us messages and the heaviness of ancestral patterns comes in, um, these messages dissipate. And what the ancestors, when we align with the well ancestors, what they do is that they help us connect to our true path, like who we need to be and what we need to bring into the world. And it doesn't have to be something amazing. Like it doesn't have to be, we don't all have to be healers. We could just be here to have a good time, to experience the joy of life. But the ancestors will help us do that. They'll help us know what we need to do and how to do it. And they will connect and give us messages, like conventional spirit guides. You can talk to them or they'll give you signs. It depends on how you work with the spirit world. But having your well ancestors behind you really does help you become who you are, who you already are. It helps you really bring your medicine into the world, whatever that medicine is.
Mhm. Yeah, and then support you and like be there and on the sidelines. Like one of the things I know from my experience when I first started connecting with the ancestors, I connected for whatever reason, like the well ancestors on one side of my lineage, one showed up as a pig, and on the other side showed up as a snake. And for whatever reason, that's just like the way they've come to me. But in those two energies, those two medicines from each side have like hugely informed me in the sense of my life task in this world.
Mhm.
And they've helped balance me too. Because I realized for a long time I was way overly, um, I wasn't seeing the full picture. And I was really heavily focused on work as my life purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my ancestors on my dad's side kind of sat me down and were like, no, 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 like that's not all of it.
Yeah,
You're missing a huge piece here. It's not all about what you do for work and how you show up in service that way. Like there's a whole other element. So I can really relate to that in what you're saying.
it's true. They really, and I tend to take myself way too seriously. And I did have some ancestors who were like, "Come on now, it's not. You just start, just laugh. Just have a good time." I have in the past been really serious, um, and I need to learn to lighten up, and I have done quite a lot since connecting with those ancestors.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting when you connect with your well ancestors, you can find ancestors that you don't expect. Like I'm European completely, as far as I know, and genetically. But when I did a connection to a well ancestor in a lineage, I couldn't, it was my mother's father's lineage, which is the most problematic. And I couldn't find one at all. Like I was just going around, this is with another practitioner. And so I ended up going to my father's lineage and connecting to a Mongolian shaman, um, you know, thousands of years ago. And it kind of was perplexing, although in that lineage, I have Russian heritage, which is not too far from Mongolia. And it was
Hmm.
definitely a blood ancestor. And I did some healing work with my uncle, and he also connected to this Mongolian shaman ancestor, um, who was there to show me. And sometimes ancestral guides will be there specifically. She was there to show me about boundaries, about protection, and showed me this disc, this protection, which I had actually just ordered it. If you can see that, it's like a mirror, a shaman's mirror,
Hmm.
and she gave me that, and I had already ordered it. But you have to be open to the unexpected showing up when you do these kind of journeys, because I would not really think, I mean, look at me, like I wouldn't think that there would be any Siberian but Mongolian, but you go back far enough, and and she's actually quite a significant helping spirit for me,
Hmm.
and she's from my blood lineage, but thousands of years ago.
Hmm.
But I haven't had a pig or a snake. That's amazing that they showed up
First,
in that guise.
it cracked me up too, especially when the pig showed up, because that side of my family has this thing with imitating pigs. So I was
Yeah,
like, how is this? This is funny. Like unconsciously somehow this like
yeah,
maybe we all know a little bit.
that's
Um
right.
yeah. And then the other piece too, I'll just add to the conversation around bringing your medicine to the world. At least what I found is on the other side of my lineage, on my mom's line, um, I became aware that part of what I agreed to in this lifetime was to resolve some of the karma of our
Yeah.
lineage. And then until I did that, there were major blocks in me moving forward with my work. Like it was all kind of intertwined. And I don't know how I could have really like opened the channels in the way that
Mhm.
they feel they are now without tending and doing some of the work you're speaking of, like tending to the line and going back and looking at like what happened and what are the lessons and what is our line committed to doing differently going forward was
Mhm.
sort of a big part of it for me.
And that's a really good point. Some of us are kind of born to be healers of the lineage. Like for some of us, this is part of our life purpose, and so we really have to do it. We can't ignore it. You can't say no, no, thank you, or else things won't move forward. And that was definitely with me. That was it. This is part of it for me, was to remove this heaviness in my ancestral lines, which is really what has been really significant. And the more that I've cleared it, the more I've moved forward and been able to do what I need to do on a personal soul level. But part of that was clearing the stuff from the past, just like you're saying, through transformation, through tending, through honoring the ancestors. Without that, I wouldn't be where I am today, which is so different from where I was 12 years ago when I started doing this work.
Mhm. And as I think in the beginning you were saying, it's kind of like when we're connected and conscious and aware and have the well ancestors with us, there's just this other level of support that wouldn't be there. It's like when we're in alignment with that part of who we are, that part of our medicine.
Yes, it's a really important and really beautiful form of support. It's like having your grandmother who really loves you and cares for you, always there for you. You have that kind of holding, and also the look here, look at, take this opportunity because this is good for you. You kind of can be steered in directions that you might not have thought were the right ones, or that might not have even occurred to you. Now I live in Switzerland. I was born in California, and moved to London and then moved to Switzerland. And all of this is through following my spirit guidance and working with my ancestors and my spirit guides and my shamanic work. It really has been a process of leading me to the life that I have today. And we also have, of course, gifts that are given to us through, we have curses or patterns that are passed down, but we also have gifts, and the gifts can be significant. For me, it's psychic abilities. All of that runs in both sides of my family quite strongly, but also the gift of poetry and song, which I haven't done a lot with, but the people who are from this part of my lineage in Wales, I'm related to the first recorded female Welsh poet. She's the first woman who has had poems published in Wales, and she used to go out and sing to her sheep. And that came up very strongly for me, doing a journey around ancestral gifts, which I believe will feature more in my work in the future.
Yeah,
And it's beautiful and also unexpected. I didn't expect that.
I love that. Yeah, it's not just the purpose piece around medicine that ancestors can help us see more clearly or step into, but it's also that there are gifts that come with being descendants of a certain lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are beautiful because it's a part of you. And
Mhm.
I as a small child, I would sing all the time, but as I grew up, I forgot that. I lost that joy and that connection. And so it's amazing to be reconnected with that, reconnected with the woman who was going out singing to her sheep,
Yeah.
which is lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense too. It's like their families of farmers or their families of writers or painters. You can kind of just see that in the world. Sometimes it's like you can very clearly see how a gift just shows up within a family multiple times.
Mhm. And we also have gifts of our soul, which we have to maybe go looking for a bit more. But our incarnations follow a certain theme, and we bring gifts from our soul, our true soul essence as well. And those are maybe even deeper gifts than the ancestral gifts, but they are part of our ancestry, our soul ancestry.
Mm.
And connecting to those is incredible and
Yeah.
connects us to our purpose. So it's a combination. Our medicine, who we are in the world, is a combination of our soul ancestry, our blood ancestry, our life purpose. Everything is equally important as the rest. And it makes this beautiful kind of tapestry, I guess. It's not
Yeah.
just one thing.
Right.
It's all of them.
As you were saying that, I was imagining that, you referenced like the DNA strand of the white line and the red line,
Yeah.
and even how we're talking about epigenetics here and just how complex DNA is and the complexity of those two like intertwining and
Yeah.
how they're expressed, how things get woken up. Like sometimes in the DNA, certain it's all there, but it doesn't necessarily get woken up or expressed. And I'm thinking about that too with, you know, everything.
And yeah, we choose what we express in the world. So we've chosen on a conscious or unconscious level, we choose our stories and we write our stories as we go along. Yes, we inherit these patterns. Yes, we inherit these gifts, but we get to choose. And that's really important to remember, that we have free will. Yes, even if you may have some curses going back in your history, you can choose. And you can choose to say no, you can choose to remove the curses, you can choose to accept the gifts, or you can choose to not accept the gifts. If you don't want, if you don't want to be of service in a certain way, you have free will. And that's very important. Free will and boundaries, just the last thing I'll say, is really important in ancestral work because they are the closest guides to us. And because of that, you need to have very good boundaries. It's like with your family, right? When you go to see your family, you don't think to have boundaries because they're your family, but you need to have boundaries. You need to say, this is my energy, this is my life. And when you don't, when the boundaries are sloppy, sometimes unwell ancestors or sort of maladaptive patterns can come in, even if you're trying consciously to work for the light. Um, I had a problem with boundaries, being extremely open and, I don't know, sensitive, psychic, whatever you want to call it. It was quite hard for me to turn off the ancestors.
Mm,
And, you know, sometimes ancestors would come in and I'd be kind of almost taken over by those stories. And I had to learn a process of building a better boundary
mhm,
and learning the discernment to say no. You know, great great aunt Clara, I don't, you know, I see your story, but your story is not my story, and I am not taking on your energy. Eh, this is the kind of thing that's important. Not to say that the work is unsafe, it's beautiful work, but it is important to have boundaries and to choose the story that you're living. And this goes for everything. Any
mhm,
kind of spiritual work, any kind of medicine work, you choose, you have boundaries, you drive the ship.
mhm. And I'm imagining that starts with becoming conscious of what's how the ancestors in general and how they're showing up in your life. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it's hard to
of
have
course.
a boundary if you're not conscious of what's going on, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Uh,
being go ahead.
no, go ahead. I agree. It is. Like when you're talking about this and you haven't connected with them, it's all just abstract. But you do start with boundaries even before you work with them. And then as it starts to happen, as you start to do more and more work, you become more and more conscious of the energies that you're immersed in, and you just kind of hold the boundary and build the boundary so it's stronger,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like over time you can just kind of relax that the boundary's there a little bit
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and know where your edges are and know who your well ancestors are. And
Yeah, it's a process, and ancestral healing is a process. It takes time. It's not usually like, sometimes people come to me for one session and they're like, okay, I want an ancestral healing, great, is it done? And I'm like, well, no, but we've done some of it. You know, it takes
yeah.
time. And it ideally is a process that people commit to working on themselves as well. You know, it can be done by a practitioner who works with you, but it's a process. But it's
Mhm.
so worthwhile. It really is. And learning, the first step is learning to connect to your ancestors, to your well ancestors. And then learning to transform.
Yeah. I think that brings us really nicely into well, one, our topic, just honoring the ancestors. I think it'd be nice to maybe touch on where that fits in with this piece
Yeah.
of the process, and also, we're going to move into the journey here. So if you want to just touch on that and sort of say a little bit about where we're going here experientially in the second part of.
Yes. So it is really important to honor your ancestors, to say thank you to the ancestors of both your blood and your soul lineage. So thank you to your own soul, your own higher self, your own soul's journey, for everything that you are and that you've experienced. And the same for your ancestors, to thank them, the ones who gave you life, the ones who made you who you are. You know, the color of your hair, the way you interact with people, the height, everything comes from your ancestors. And we are here because our ancestors gave us life. So it's very important. Gratitude, honoring them is really important. It's nice to have a little altar. Um, some some traditions, you know, you put photos, like Chinese altar ancestors, they have ancestral altars, they have photos up of the, this is common in many religions actually, but for me, I don't choose to put the photos up unless I know that they're very, very well ancestors. um, so although I know roughly who my well ancestors are, I just have an altar with a little a token for each lineage. So with 4 candles, for one for each lineage, and a token and a main candle. And I honor them. I light the candle. I make some offerings. I'll say thank you. And you can also have an altar for your soul lineage, which can be a different one or part of the same one. But as at its simplest, just lighting a candle and saying thank you to the ancestors is really important and will give you power. You can say thank you to everyone, but you only want to connect to the well ancestors when you're doing the thanking. But even the unwell ones have given you something. Even the patterns are helpful in the soul's process, right?
Mm.
Yeah. And we are going to do a journey connecting to a well ancestor and seeing if they have any gifts to give us. When I do these journeys, I'm usually channeling them. So I roughly know where we'll start, but it actually just kind of comes through my higher self from spirit. And so we're going to go on this journey to meet a well ancestor, and we'll see what happens because I'm not entirely sure. That's how it
Beautiful.
works for me. I don't plan it in advance.
Yeah. Thank you for offering this. Is there anything, should people just be in their chairs or lying down, or what's the best way to set this up?
Yeah, they can. The journey is about a half an hour. So if you're more comfortable lying down and closing your eyes, that's a way that people often do it in the West, doing shamanic journeying. If you like to sit in your chair, that's also fine. It's there'll be music, and you'll just be following my voice as I go. So whatever you
Beautiful.
choose works just fine.
Yeah, and just a little context or just concluding on the discussion piece here is I'll just add that, part of the intention here is to support those of you listening, whether you're listening to the playback or on live, with just starting to build this connection. If you already have a connection with the ancestors, then I imagine, Iris, this journey is still just as relevant. It'll just kind of pick up wherever someone is in their journey with their ancestors. And yeah, and then we'll just come back on at the end and have a little time for closing.
Yeah, I think that is exactly it. So if you've met your ancestors, if you work with your ancestors, this will also work for you. And if you haven't, it's a nice introduction. I'm just going to start my music in a minute. So everyone get in a comfortable place. Okay. And take a few deep breaths in and out. And I'm just going to do a little calling in of the energies, just opening the space. So I call out to all of the loving ancestors who are well in spirit, of both the blood and the soul lineage, all of those who have lived well and died well and reconciled their lives. Thank you for your presence here today. I call out to all of the spirits who love and look after the people, those who we know and those who we don't know, to make a bubble of love and light over all of our spaces, to ensure that everything that happens today is for our highest and best good. I call out to the four directions: east, south, west, and north, and to all of the energies I hold. Thank you to Mother Earth and Father Sky for the grounding and protection. Thank you also to the ancestors of place, the people and energies who have lived and died, who hold the places where we are today. We honor you and thank you. And I give thanks too to the spirit of technology for allowing me to connect, for allowing spirit to connect to all of you. Just breathing now, in and out, feeling your body relax, getting ready to go on a journey to a well ancestor. of the blood or the spirit lineage. So feeling yourself relaxed, just imagine now that you're opening the door of your house and stepping out into a beautiful meadow, a meadow filled with flowers. Just feel the sunlight on your skin, smell the scent of the flowers, feel the wind. And whether you see images or just sense them, just connect to the energy of this journey and know that everything that you're experiencing is safe and protected. Every step that you take is part of your greater life journey. So just imagine now walking forward on a path through this meadow, and you're going to come to the trees, to some woods, and you'll see a beautiful big tree. I'd like you to just imagine placing your hands on the tree and letting any energy that isn't yours flow into the tree, down the roots, out into the earth. And when that feels complete, step back from that tree and walk forward. And as you walk forward, you'll see ahead of you a small river. Walk towards the river and stop at the bank. And this is the stream of time. We're going to travel down this to find an ancestor who is well in spirit. For this journey, it can be a soul ancestor, or it can be a blood ancestor. Both are equally important. So we're just going to trust the journey takes us where we need to go. Now I'd like to just have you connect for a moment. Picture a bubble around your body, like a soap bubble, a child's bubble. A skin of protection, beautiful rainbow colored, that keeps out what needs to be kept out and lets in what needs to be let in. And I'd like you to imagine this beautiful bubble surrounding you as you wade into the stream. It's pleasantly cold, but not too cold. And the water swirls around your legs, up to your waist. And you can feel a current tugging you downstream. Just relax and let go into this current, supported by your beautiful rainbow bubble. Just relax and let the current take you to your ancestor. Going back now through the bloodlines, through the soul lines, back down through the generations, looking for a well ancestor who wants to connect to you right now, who has a message for you and a gift. And as you float along, just releasing any extra thoughts, any burdens of your present existence. And you'll feel now that you're being pulled towards the shore, allowing yourself to drift. You're still in your bubble towards the shore. And you'll see a path here. This path is going to take you to a well ancestor, to a shining one, a good, true, and beautiful ancestor who wants to connect to you right now. So imagine yourself walking down this path, walking perhaps through woods, and you'll come to a clearing. And in this clearing, you will see a figure. Or more than one figure. And this is a well ancestor who's come forward to make a connection with you at this time. And just let yourself connect to them. Speak to them if there are words. Connect to the energy of the feeling. And let yourself be held by this healed ancestral energy. And after you've made contact, you'll notice that you're standing in a clearing, and in the center of the clearing is a fire. And your ancestor and you are going to light the fire together. So just imagine leaning over and lighting the fire. That spark catching the tinder, the flame slowly rising higher. This is a healing fire. This fire represents the healing of the generations of both your soul and your bloodline. And today we're going to do a little bit of a healing ritual with this fire, with this well ancestor, with the other well ancestors who you may see or sense around you. Because all of us have patterns in our family history, in the story of our soul, in the story of our family. We all have heavy energy. We have stories that need to be released. We have energy that isn't helpful to us. So I'd just like to imagine you now that you suddenly have a backpack that you didn't even know you were carrying. It might be quite heavy, and you suddenly feel it on you and think, oh, I've been carrying that all this time? My goodness. And when you open it, you will see heavy, heavy items. For me, they look like bits of metal, almost like chains. And these represent the old ancestral stories that you don't need anymore. So I'd like you, with the help and support of your well ancestor, to put these into the fire, one by one, whatever is in the backpack. It could be anything. It could make sense or it could not make sense. Just put it in the fire. And as you put it in the fire, watch the fire transform it. It flares up. Maybe the flames turn white and sparkling. And some of that heavy energy that you've been carrying around as a representative of your lineages is released today. So keep doing that now. And loading those items. Letting the energy release. And when you're ready, put the backpack in the fire too. And know that you don't have to carry this around anymore. These stories are not your stories. This energy is not your energy. Just watch as the fire dies down. Give thanks for that transformation that happened. And now we're going to take a leap of faith here, still surrounded by your rainbow bubble. Your ancestor is going to take your hand and lead you through the fire. So you walk through this fire of transformation, and the flames engulf you and burn away everything in you that you don't need. Everything from your lineages that is heavy and needs to be released at this moment in time. Let the flames of this heart fire burn through you. Restructuring you, releasing you from the bounds, the ties to past energies, to past stories, to any patterns or curses that need undoing now. Stay in this fire for as long as you need. Feeling the light of the well one saturating you, vibrating in every cell of your body mind. And when you feel you're ready, your ancestor will take your hand and you'll step out of the fire into a different realm. You look around and you see that you're in the realm of the shining ones. This is the place of your well ancestors. This is a place of all well ancestors, the luminous ones, the ones who have ascended and are of the greatest help to us This is a place beyond space and time. A place where you can connect to your highest and best self, to the part of your soul that is also an ancestor. Your higher soul, your eternal self, who exists in all incarnations. And maybe you'll see that self here and now, your eternal soul self. And if they want to speak to you, you may go and speak to them. Or at the very least, feel their presence. This part of you that is more than you. This part of you that connects to the all that is. To your divine purpose and to your point of origin as a soul. And this part of you may have a gift or a message. Your eternal soul ancestor may have a gift or a message for you. Something to give you or tell you that will help you with your life's journey. Your journey in this time and this place. And now, in this realm of the luminous ones, you can ask to be shown your lineages. The lineages of your blood ancestors, or the lineage of your soul ancestors. And ask to be shown if there's any transformation that's needed. If there's any lineage that needs your attention for further healing. Looking at your mother's mother, your mother's fathers, your father's father, or your father's mother. Just feeling into those lineages. You might get a sensation, an image, or a feeling around one of them. An idea that there's further work or healing to be done. And if you don't, that's fine. But what we're going to do here from the place of the luminous ones is send healing out all of your lineages. You can imagine a great tree in this realm with you as the trunk. With energy branching out from your arms up to the sky, and down from your feet into the earth. This beautiful light of connection with the healed ancestors, of clearing, of connecting. To your ancestors of both blood and spirit. And connecting your ancestry to the light of your eternal soul ancestor who you've just met. Just feeling that light flow through you to the past and to the future, to permeate all levels of consciousness. Any of those in your family tree who may be unwell, letting this light touch them. Calling any who might want to be released now to come into the realm of light and over to the other side. Being conscious, as we call those who are unwell, that you still have that rainbow bubble of protection around yourself. And the unwell ancestors can't touch you. They come and then they go into the light. And now, in the realm of the luminous ones, you're going to connect again. Ask for an ancestral guide to help you on your healing journey. I'm going to ask for a well ancestor of either lineage, and this may be the one who you met at the fire, and this may be a different one. I'm going to ask them to step forward. And this is your ancestral guide who can help you in any ancestral work that you do in the future. You can connect with who will be a spirit guide, who will be the spokesperson for the well ancestors for you. And just take a moment to feel into or speak to this guide. You can ask them where they're from. Are they from your family or your soul? When did they live? And what message do they have for you today? Pay attention to any sensations you may be feeling, any emotions that come up. Remember, you're held in this space of the luminous ones, connected to the energy of your eternal soul ancestor, surrounded by well ancestors. You are safe and protected. You are calm and connected here. And just feel how that is in your body. A sense of connection, of being held, maybe in a way that you've not experienced before. And know that this is always open to you when you connect to the well ancestors, when you come to this realm, in a journey or in your dreams. The luminous ones, the well ones are always here for us. They love us. They're a part of us. We feel them in our blood, in our soul. Just taking some deep breaths now and saying thank you to the luminous ancestors around us, the ones who are well in spirit, in this realm of the shining ones. Thank you to the guide that stepped forward to be your ancestral guide. Thank you to your eternal soul ancestor, that part of you that's connected to all things. And taking with you some of this peace, some of this joy, some of this love as you turn to go now. You're going to walk back through the fire, back to the clearing. Saying thank you to your ancestral guide, knowing that they'll always be with you and that you can call on them through journey work, through ritual, through dreams. Now, taking with you any gifts that you received, remembering the words that you were given. Imagining the bubble still around you, you're going to come back into the stream. And the current is flowing the other way now, flowing back upstream. Going back through time, up to yourself, to your own place in the cosmos here and now. Imagining yourself stepping out of the river. Taking with you anything that you received and maintaining that connection to that realm. As you turn around and walk back through the trees, back through the meadow, back through your door, and back into your body in this time and this place. Take some deep breaths and feel how your body has changed, how your energy is impacted. Perhaps there's less tension in your back. Perhaps you feel an expansion in your chest or your heart area. And make sure to feel your feet on the ground or your body against the bed or the couch. Just imagine for a moment roots growing out of the bottom of your feet, reaching down and connecting to the center of the earth. to a small, quiet pool of silver light, a well of deep earth energy where the earth dreams herself into being. Just connect your roots to that silver earth light and bring that light up through the bottom of your feet, through your legs, into your torso, through your abdomen, through your heart, down your arms, up your neck and into your head. Just connect now with the earth. Start wiggling your fingers and your toes. Feel yourself here and now. Make sure you're here in this time and this place. And breathe deeply. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. Just giving thanks to the ancestors, to all of the spirits who helped us with that journey. Giving thanks and honoring all of our ancestors, all of our incarnations, and all of our spirit guidance. Thank you. So when you're ready, you can start coming back if you like. And if anyone would like to share, I'd like to invite you to share, I guess, in the chat. Are we sharing in the chat? Is that how we're doing it?
Yeah, if you'd like to share in the chat, please do.
That was an interesting journey. I had not gone to the eternal soul ancestor before. So thank you, everyone. Whenever I do these kind of journeys, it's everyone's energy contributes. All of the people who are here and all of the people who will join, their energy contributes to that journey. So thank you for that, everyone. That was nice.
Thank you. Your voice is so soothing too.
Thank you.
And the music was really beautiful as well.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we had intended to leave a little bit of time for question and answer. We really didn't get to that. We're right at the end of the 90 minutes now, but if anyone has any questions, I know you just went on a journey, so it may not be the time for that, but feel free to put them in the chat or to email. We'll be sending out an email in the next 24 hours with the recording. And if you do have any questions, you can just reply and I will pass those on to Iris, or we can just answer kind of organically. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I want to share a little bit about how you can find Iris. Actually, I'm going to put a link here to her upcoming events. She has 2 upcoming events. One is an ancestral connection workshop for, I think it's 4 different meetings, getting deeper into this work. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's just a course to connect to your 3 different ancestors of blood, ancestor of soul, and ancestors of place, which we didn't really talk about today. It's kind of a foundation course to really learn to connect. And then once you have that level of connection, then deeper healing work can be done, which leads into my ancestral transformation course, which will be, I don't have the dates for that yet, but it should be around November. Of course, you can take one without the other. They're independent, but it is nice whenever you're doing ancestral work to have a sort of basis and to connect to the 3 ancestral lines, which include the place that we live. It's very important to honor the ancestors of the land and of the plants and animals that we live with as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I just saw, I was just saw a question came through. Do you have time for one question?
Yeah, of course.
It says, if you have any feelings in your body, which you feel are ancestral, how do you think they need to be shifted?
Well, that's a good question, Simon. It really depends. It needs to be more connection, needs to be a little bit more of journey work done to that feeling or to that pattern. And then there are many different ways to shift them. One of the easiest ways, or one of the best ways, is to use rituals based on the four directions to help transform that. But a really good way actually is to dance. And I know that you're familiar with shamanic work, so you can dance into that feeling and let the dance and let your body tell you what that feeling is, what that pattern is, who that's coming from. And that was actually how I connected the first time to the fifth great grandmother and that pattern of being heartbroken and alone. It was done through dance. That's a really, really, so you might put on some music. It doesn't have to be shamanic music. It can be 90s dance music, whatever you like, and dance it. But make sure that you do it in a ceremonial way, and you will start to get more information around that feeling and how that you might need to do a fire ceremony to give that feeling to the fire. You might need to speak the words aloud. You might need to bury something in the earth or put something in the water or do all of those. And this is a kind of work that I'll be doing in the ancestral transformation, is working on a specific pattern and transforming it and releasing it. I hope that answers your question. Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. And I'll just also kind of bring us back to where we were before the journey started, is like one of the ways that was shared with me to connect with the ancestors, to build that connection, is like you were saying, just the daily or ongoing, whether it's daily or not, of just saying thank you. One of the shamanic teachers I worked with said that that's true of any shamanic relationship we're building, is to start by just saying hello and thank you. And that simple practice can really kind of go a long way in helping, at least initiating the connection.
I think that's really, really important. And so there are many ways, there's many ways that you can do that, but lighting a candle and saying, hello, thank you, I appreciate you, I see you. I mean, our ancestors really want contact. We ignore them a lot. So they're so happy. They kind of mine cheered when I first started saying hello to them. Yay,
Yeah.
you're seeing us, hurrah, And then they start saying, oh, and we need to do this and this, and then you start getting into the work. If anyone is interested, there are many resources. Obviously, I teach this and do a lot of other shamanic work, personal healing and that kind of thing. But there are quite a lot of resources for your own self-study. And I can recommend, if you would like to email Megan, I guess you can send me it, or email me. It's iris@brightshaman.com. I'm happy to send a list of resources for ancestral work that you can do on your own, if you're interested. But yes, Megan, you're totally right. In any shamanic relationship, saying hello and thank you is like the number one most important primary step.
It's like, start here. And it's funny what you said about how they're so happy to be acknowledged. When we were in the journey, I had this experience of sort of like four ancestors all coming together. And they're like, you can ask us for more, because I've gotten in the habit of asking them specific to one part of my life. They're like, you could ask about everything. Like, we're here for all of it. And I was like, oh yeah, good call.
Yeah.
So
It's true. They're not just there for your, I think that's a really good message. Yeah. It's not just for like your spiritual work. It's for everything. It's for, you have a problem, you want help, you ask the ancestors and they will provide.
all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you're honoring them, which you will be doing. Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Iris, for giving us this gift, sharing your wisdom on this topic, blessing us with this journey today. I will, if you want anything to send out, we'll send out an email. So if you have any resources you want to share, you can pass those on to me and I'll send those out to the group tomorrow. And
Sure. And
yeah, this concludes our 5th event. Will be the final in the series, is going to be a month, 4 weeks from today. It's on August 18th, same time, 11 Pacific. And the topic's going to be living into a bigger story, which was interesting because it felt like that started some of what you were saying, Iris, was like kind of we're maybe like pick up on that and just get into that theme of choosing our stories and living into a bigger story in the context of our medicine and who we are and what we're here to do. And my friend Mandy Bishop's going to be um, sharing a story as part of that. She's a wonderful storyteller amongst many other things. And so really looking forward to that. I will send out the invitation. Everyone who is here will get the invite. And yeah, wish you a very, I know some people are in Europe, so whether you're in having a happy evening or beautiful rest of your day, thank
yes.
you all.
And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Megan, for this lovely experience. It was really nice. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day or evening.
Mhm.
Bye.